Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the first ever Social Justice Week of activities at the Borough of Manhattan Community College. My name is Professor Oluremi Alapo. I'm an adjunct faculty at the Center for Ethnic and Race Studies at BMCC, and also a committee member of the Race, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. And you may be wondering why we're here today and why we're working on putting a program together on social justice. In light of everything that's been happening around the world and especially right here in the United States, not at any time in history has it been important to put forth programs on social justice, programs on social change. And the Race, Equity, and Inclusion Committee at BMCC is centered on the college's work necessary to understanding and addressing systematic racism to create a more equitable system for individuals and families from historically marginalized groups. And the work of this committee and what they're charged with is to actively work to dismantle systemic racism and structural inequality across the BMCC community, including students, faculty, staff, contractors, collaborators, and everyone that is affiliated with our university community. The changes that this committee seeks is in regard to equity, inclusion, and justice will require all our collective work, as why we're gathered here today. We commit to reach out to embrace and amplify the voices of all members of the BMCC community to design and implement mechanisms that hold BMCC, the BMCC leadership, and our community, and including ourselves, to be accountable on working on goals in which, will be actionable, to develop actionable items to reach the goal of dismantling systemic racism on campus and around the campus community. So with that, I welcome you today to the first ever BMCC Social Justice Week of activities, where throughout the week, there has been a number of activities, both virtually and in person on campus. This panel discussion today is a discussion on traditional storytelling methods as a tool for promoting social change. And, this is a panel of women educators and community activists that will share their expertise on the use of traditional storytelling methods as a critical framework for talking about racism and other forms of injustice. The panelists will discuss why storytelling is important and how it can be used for social change. In addition, the speakers will discuss methods of storytelling in advancing equity, inclusion, and justice in our communities, and how to change people's perspectives, grab their attention and curiosity, and how to be emotionally engaged in social justice advocacy. Today, we have 5 or 6 panelists from various communities around the US. We have panelists from Native American community, African American community, the Caribbean community, the African diaspora, and so on and so forth. So I welcome you again to the BMCC Social Justice Week of activities, which the theme for this week's lineup of activities is Your Voice, Our Action, a Better BMCC. Again, I welcome you to the panel discussion on traditional storytelling methods as a tool for promoting social change. Thank you so much for joining us. And first, I'm going to introduce our first panelist. Her name is Grandmother Patricia Ann Davis from the Choctaw, Chata, Navajo, Diné Native American community. And she's going to be sharing with us today a presentation on Diné, creation stories of selfhood. Let's welcome her warmly to the BMCC community. Welcome, grandmother. You have the floor. Oh, you're muted. You have to unmute.
So wonderful to see everyone. Greetings and beloved Nana. Also, each and every one of us here. Thank you for this precious time to share traditional knowledge, to share treasure knowledge from Indigenous wisdom. The oral tradition is passed from generation to generation in what we call the Nephazod, and that's the sacred language and words of the holy people. They are all of our collective primordial ancestors who gave us original instructions as, quote, holy earth surface people and five fingers people. That is the Nahuk the and Bella Ashlai. So that we may live the loving way as a way of life, understand that it is very descriptive that five fingers people translates to humane, which translates to not doing harm, and then knowing how to correct the harm that may have been done. So as humane beings, we are empowered for social change that benefits everyone. Therefore, it is traditional to introduce myself. My spiritual family and all my relatives. I will introduce myself, but leave out my ceremonial name because it is only used in a ceremonial setting. And you can see that I have a colonized American Indian boarding school name, common name, Patricia Ann Davis in Shia Adone, a Mississippi band of Choctaw and Hachi ni Bashalchin, Chata, the Ne, Edashache, Kia Ani Edashanella, Bian the Ne, Biaja in Shle, Doni Hikle, which is, I am a precious child of Creator within creation, and also everyone, hear this, everyone is included equally in this oneness that we call Hojo. So when we say storytelling, we recognize that each person's life experience is valid, and therein is the value of storytelling that defines our experience of our sacred self within us and in our sacred place within the universe. And we affirm natural order laws of a metaphysical infrastructure, the container, the context that we are equally governed by. And this ensures what is termed a critical framework for deconstructing racism and all forms of inhumaneness and injustice. People's Institute, you might have heard of the People's Institute, they're known for undoing racism. And they define racism as an assumption of superiority, of privilege, and entitlement, which then becomes a construct to control and manipulate the world's natural resources for one's own benefit. And that results in victimizing other people. Undoing inhumane construct, any inhumane construct requires a reframe. And I'm using that word to reframe our thinking out of an inverse thinking system where there's a belief in a deficient self-image that historically dehumanizes and devalues people of color and women, forcing us to agree to lose and pay to lose. And this reframe, because we cannot reform anything morally, ethically inhumane, we're reframing our thinking into an affirmative thinking system. And I simplify this by saying it is win-win, constructive and life-affirming decision for those outcomes. Social justice is accomplished by reframing out of the win-lose. I call it empire folly. I win and you lose, and winner take all, and so on. genocide and plunder, mass murder and theft. We're witnessing that throughout history and even in our contemporary times. So win-lose is no win for everyone, and it is destructive and death-producing decision and outcomes. And therefore, defining justice as love, that means we see the natural order law that governs us equally, in which our story, our creation of selfhood is cross-cultural, it's inclusive, it's intergenerational, and can be translated into any language in any land. I will summarize and simplify here. So let us begin with first woman, first man who came into manifestation in a light body as mist people, similar to what we would describe as a mirage. And then we were clothed in the four sacred elements, the earth, water, fire, and air. And then we're existing within the environmental earth, water, fire, and also the air, between Mother Earth and Father Sky. And our in-breath and out-breath originates the perfect peace and love of Creator, in which we move and make a sound according to our conscience, according to Indigenous affirmative thinking system, where reality is exact. It is not consciousness and perception, where reality is relative to perception, and therefore people polarize into adversary and perpetual conflict. So it is also spiritual morality. The first part of creation is that everything was created with purpose and order. And the second part is that unifying principles were placed upon the earth in four directions in a clockwise manner. And so this container then provides us this, this infrastructure in which we learn. And when we learn, we're going through a healing process. That healing process then is the correction. So our creation story of selfhood says that we came collectively through a first world, a second world, a third world, and a fourth world in which we are existing, and we're going into another world, the fifth world. And the correction takes place between the worlds. So we can see now we're in that correction time in which we must evaluate, make self-assessment and self-inventory regarding our life experience. So the validity of storytelling is always that we are speaking about our collective survival. And so there are two examples, and I'll say this very briefly, that the divine feminine and the divine masculine within us is not male dominate and female submit. That's where the animosity and aggression is between genders, between nations, between governments, between organizations, communities, between different nations of people, and so on. So the male life task is as a protector, provider, and the female life task is as a life giver and nurturer. And so when we reframe through our storytelling, our experience of that domination, submission doesn't work, and why it doesn't work, we know it doesn't work, then how do we begin to then initiate our conversation to empty the animosity and aggression in such a way that our storytelling is a way of emptying without judgment, punishment, or condemnation, because it can be humorous, it can be a teaching, a moral story. And so in this way, this oral tradition that I'm speaking about also covers governing systems too, in which male and female collaborate, they coordinate, and this is for our collective survival. So I hope that I could, that I got that across. It's a lot of detail that we can answer in the Q&A. So thank you, my spiritual family, my relatives. Thank you. Ahihat, Wajona Hasklin, Wajona Hasklin, Wajok Nasklin, Ojona Haslin, as we go forward in beauty and peace and love.
Thank you so much, Grandmother Patricia. You still have a few minutes if you wanted to share the slides that you had earlier. You were allotted 15 minutes, and we're just about 10 minutes into your presentation. So I would recommend, or I would suggest that you can share the slides and talk about Native American storytelling from your nation through the courses or through the activities that you conduct in various communities. Yes.
Yes, you will see that there's a circle on the bottom of the page and a circle on top, and there is a pathway. And this pathway is how to, that is, the social justice is achieved by an Indigenous ceremonial change process in which all healing ceremony means that we learn. Learning is healing and healing is learning. So we name what is out of balance. And when we name what is out of balance, we must identify what the root cause is. Therefore, there is no confrontation, there's no blaming, or there is no value judgment in this process, in the emptying process. We have to identify a root cause. And I already identified the root cause of racism, that it is domination, submission, and it's to control world resources for one's own benefit, which puts people into this categories of addicted, mentally ill, incarcerated, homeless, which is trapped in a closed circle. It's a design failure because it's win-lose. Nobody wins. It's destructive and death producing. Here we have our reframe, which is that dismantling, deconstructing, undoing the root cause of racism is then how to reframe our thinking into top circle, which is an illustration for win-win, constructive, and life-affirming. And you can see the life cycle is in a circle, and you see the male, the nurturer, and the predictor provider is a healthy helping teamwork. So that's what we're looking for. Unhealthy helping is where we're experiencing at a global crisis today. That means to help people to stay the way that they are. And so then you see the 4 directions, and that is what I'm calling natural order, that represent the laws that we are all governed by. There is a sunrise, there is a east, south, and west, and north. There is sunrise, noon, evening, and midnight. And we're traveling together. We're traveling together, and anywhere we can take time out to reframe our thinking, to correct ourselves. And that is what is needed today when we say social justice and when we say racism. They can be abstract constructs, and yet in our language, they're very descriptive of what is not good for us and what doesn't work for us as as an individual, or as a family, or as a collective of people. So this is not religion, it's not academic theory, or it's not philosophy either. And then there are the we would say white people, red people, yellow people, black people. That's white shell, turquoise, and abalone shell, and obsidian or jet. And you can see that the order, there is purpose, order, so that no one is born higher or lower. And we cannot say, but not you. We can say inclusively that we are traveling together from spring, summer, fall, winter, from the child to the youth, to the adult, to the elder, and the grandparent. And this reframe is, instead of the resource going from the poor to the rich, from the bottom to the top, as you see on the bottom circle illustration, then focus on the top where it's going clockwise from elder to youth. So this is very powerful forum here. This is very powerful panel here. It is cross-cultural and generational, in which then this knowledge then is passed to the younger generation and forward into the next 7 generations for that decision making, for win-win, constructive, and life-affirming decision and outcome. And that's what it takes for us to have that intention to visualize it, and also to talk about it, dialogue about it. And then we will have group consensus, and then we can design the co-creative solutions, and then we can manifest them in the practical application. So that is my hope for this panel and for everyone listening. And thank you very much again for this precious time.
Thank you so much, Grandmother Patricia Dine Choctaw Navajo. And I hope I got all your names and affiliation correctly, for sharing methods of traditional storytelling from the Native American community, and, you know, showing this visual, this timely visual. I think we would even need a session on its own just for you to elaborate further, and, you know, teaching individuals about the different components or aspects. It sounds so easy, that, you know, when you hear of, you know, the ways in which we need to collaborate, work together intergenerationally, from generation to generation, to read off the world or our communities off of all types of ills or injustice or racism. But the work goes beyond just calling out to people. We have to collaborate together. We have to find the right fit in every community, the right type of people that will actually come together and work hand in hand, from one generation to another into the future. And, you know, so that we can dismantle systemic racism and all injustice in communities around the world. So I want to thank you again for sharing your presentation with us. Again, there's going to be enough time during the Q&A if individuals would like to ask questions or even make comments, or if you have any suggestions to any of the panelists. We will have enough time after everyone has completed their presentation. Thank you once again, Grandmother. Next, I would like to bring Sister Naomi Anderson, aka, as I fondly call her, Queen Mother Nana Zakia. And she's going to be speaking to us about African traditional methods of storytelling for social change. I'll be posting the bios of all the speakers in the chat, and they will do quick self-introductions when they're about to begin their presentation, so that we don't take a lot of time with introductions. So I've posted the bio for Queen Mother Nana Zakia, who will be speaking to us today on African traditional methods of storytelling for social change. You're welcome, Queen Mother Nana. Please unmute. Yes.
Thank you so much. I am so proud.
Good to see you.
So honored to be here. You know, Mother Patricia, and how much I love you. I have not seen you in 3 years. Love upon you with all my relations. I thank you, Remy, for being always thinking about me, for always understanding and realizing my work, my spirit in the world, and what I have to offer to not just my people, but to all people. I really am very full right now.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Good
This
to
is
see
what I
you.
needed right now. I needed to be in that circle with intelligent, loving, hardworking women who are working for our people and for the people, by the people, and of the people all the time. I thank you. I am humbled, humbled, humbled. You do not know. Blessings and welcome, everybody. My name is Nana Sakia. I am a queen mother. I was made a queen mother in Ghana, West Africa in January of 1995. This itself is in a little story about social change and how storytelling and how it impacts our people. So I'm going to give you a 3-minute story about how I became a queen mother all the way in Ghana, West Africa. In 1994, I took a group of children for over 50 years. I had been working with children and families in the Harlem community and just working with music and theater and dance and sports and just really the total involvement aspects of helping lifting our people up. And of course, I live in Harlem. It's a marginalized community. It's a community that is vibrant with culture. It's a community that's vibrant with art. It's a community that's vibrant with a lot of history of people making changes for justice and social justice. We have Adam Clayton Powell. We have we have Adam Clayton Powell. We have Malcolm X. We have so many leaders who came out of our community that we know the worth of our people when we're working with them and we are living amongst them. We know who is working to make things better and who is working against us. And we know that we have a whole system called racism, social and economic injustice. We have blackballing, redlining. As you said, Mother, I really want to, when you get a chance, I really want to get that diagram because this is something that I can also teach and spread to our people as we talk. There's no such thing as a win-lose situation. That win-lose situations make us lose. So to make a long story short, I was in Harlem working with children. I decided to take 4 young people to Ghana, West Africa in March of 1994 so that they can get outside of their limited aspects in the community of where they were living in Harlem and broaden their mind and their experiences. And in doing so, when we went to Ghana, West Africa in March of 1994, the children were still in school, but they had to keep up with their lessons. They had to do journals. And they also had to discuss at the end of each day, what was their experience and how the day was doing. Now, when we went, we took a ton, I mean a ton of books and school supplies and clothes so that we can give out to the other children when we got there in Africa. It was a huge success. We had a great time. And I made lots of connections. And then in December of 1995, I decided to go back again to Africa because that was my first trip to Africa. All of my friends had been going to Africa and none of them I was not able to go to any of the trips with any of my friends. So finally, I got a chance to go. And when I went with the children, it was work. And I didn't get a chance to enjoy myself as much. I did have a good time. But then again, in 95, I went for my spiritual development, enhancement, to have my strength. And in doing so, I had some folks that I knew that were there, African Americans that was on the Cape Coast side they had a house known as One Africa. They were from America, but they were living there. And we had a Kwanzaa. And that Kwanzaa, I was very busy in gathering the village children because they didn't know too much about Kwanzaa. But what I did was I gathered the children. We had a fashion show. We did the presentation of the Kwanzaa, like a theater presentation of the Kwanzaa principles. We had music, we had dance, we had everything. And when we had this event, which overlooks the ocean, and just or to the right, you could see the slave castles, the Cape Coast slave castle, the first slave castle ever built in Africa on the shore. Now we're on the land, and this is my view, the great ocean. If I put my spirit out from Cape Coast, I can probably reach over the great ocean and touch New York City. So in doing so, we had people that came from various parts of the Cape Coast area and the village in Queen Mother came from the village of Asankrua, and she saw me and she says, "Oh my God, I see you. You was cooking, you was serving, you was telling the children how to do the dance, how to do the fashions and sing and everything." And we just had a bonding. The next thing I know, about 3 weeks later, in January, she said, "I need a woman like you in our village." She came from a village in the Ascend area, which was like, it's in the rainforest, and they are all farmers. These are the men and women who bring down the oranges, the coconuts, the palm, everything of the produce that was natural in our community. They brought to the main town from the mountains to Cape Coast to the areas. So the next thing I know, I'm nominated as a Queen Mother. The next thing I know, I'm sitting in the stool. The next thing I know, there is a history about my position. And the position that I had that they gave me is called the Akobia Hene. The Akobia Hene is usually a position given to men, because in Ghana, they don't have, in our traditional, in most indigenous and traditional lifestyles and culture and the ways of the people, you don't have just one chief. You have many chiefs, and you have advisors, and you have the elder councils, and you have the women council. Right up until 1995, even to this day, our people are living this in Ghana. So my position as an Akobia Hene chief, of which the Queen Mother guards, because the women in Ghana, they're the ones that choose who would be the chiefs. The Queen Mothers have certain positions in the Abusia Penny Council, which are the main families that make up the village, and they are the advisors. So this position that she was born into as a Queen Mother, she could nominate other chiefs, but her house, where she came from, was specifically the Akobia Hene chief. And they had a stool that went unoccupied for over 350 years. How did I get this stool? I don't know. It's the work of the ancestors. But to make a long story short, that chief was kidnapped and sent somewhere. They don't know where. And the Queen Mother, excuse me, of that position at 350 years ago, decided and said, because this Akobia Hene chief was such a good chief and protected our people the best they could, and he was kidnapped in the process, this position will be remained unoccupied until the one we lost is returned to us. Isn't that wonderful? And she felt that I was the one. So since 1995 up until now, I have been living in America, but I've still been doing what I need to do in Ghana, West Africa. I built schools, classrooms, boreholes and wells. I had six teachers' headquarters built, so college kids from the city and the surrounding universities can come into the town, and they'll have their own living quarters, and they wouldn't be a burden to anybody in the village, and they can have their social life, and everything will be fine. So these are some of the things that I did. But it was through the story, through the history of the Queen Mother that they kept for 350 years about how this Akobia Hene chief was protecting the village of a slave raid. And then they themselves got captured, because what happened was his strategy was to send the rest of the village away, because they knew absolutely that the villages down and surround them, all of a sudden there was fire everywhere. People were disappearing, people were getting kidnapped, people were being killed, and villages and loyalty and everything. It was just a wreck during that time. So he sent most of the people of the village away, and he kept those few soldiers, and they fought. Of course, there were many other soldiers that they found dead, but they put their heads on post. But the Akobihene chief and some other chiefs, I guess because they figured he was valuable, they stole him. And that position is usually for men, but it's not given to a woman unless the Queen Mother's family and their Busapeni family has not had a son, and then the first daughter of that family would be able to take the position. So I'm the first daughter, and I am the only one from my family who went back to Africa to catch the Sankofa love and honor as a Queen Mother and bring it back to my people. So that in itself tells you how storytelling and how it tells you about the history, the culture, the commitment of a people. These people are a Khan people. They live in the rainforest of National Khakum Park. So they are simple people. And this is something that they kept in their traditions, a story that's passed down. So when it came time for me to become a chief, there was consultation with the elders, consultations with the gods, consultations amongst myself, and consultations, of course, with my own spirit, so that I would feel fit for it. And when I got to live in this village between the years of 2001 and 2007, and I did all those wonderful things, build a schoolhouse, make sure 2 more bore wells were built so that the women would have water and wouldn't have to carry it on their heads so far from one end of the village, and the teachers' quarters and all of those good things. I also learned a lot about the traditions of our people. So our social, our moral, our cultural, and our traditions are tied to the oral traditions of Indigenous people. And they tie those traditions and they carry those stories within their hearts, passed down to generation, so that those people and those ancestors and the ways that they have would not be forgotten. And as time goes on, of course, traditions, culture, religions would have to adjust with the time. So we get to have some type of adjustment and modifications, but not far away from the original scope of what our ancestors did. And that is how our people live. Now, I'd like to tell you an African story. It's an African proverb, and it's very simple. There was a king, and the king was a modest king. He was a good king. He was a jovial king, but he also was a king that can be quite difficult sometimes. And at times, he would be the type of person that would seem like he just had a hot temper and he would just do something and he would just send a sentence on someone because that was the way he felt at the time. He had a servant. This servant that he had served him. They grew up together. It was his manservant. They grew up together. They had been through many, many trials and tribulations of him and his chieftaincy. Now, remember I said that basically he was really a good king. There's difficult decisions. To wear the crown is to be heavy. Well, this king had a feast. There was a feast and a festival, and then people were enjoying themselves, and everybody was laughing, and something happened. And it was a little bit embarrassing to the king, but it was just a jovial thing. And his manservant made a joke about it. Chief, because the king was drinking, because he felt embarrassed, he thought that his servant from all of these years was embarrassing him and was trying to at least insult him. So it was like saying, like in Ghana, you can't say, oh, you're crazy, because insanity is not something the ancestors want for anyone. But if you say it, it means that you're saying they have no mental capacity. So I guess that whatever happened, probably the servant said, oh, you're crazy. Now the chief got insulted. He said, so, I don't like what you said. You embarrassed me in front of the whole village. So now I'm going to feed you to my mad dogs. I will feed you to my dogs. The servant said, oh, please forgive me. I beg, please forgive me. Don't do that. Oh my God. And he said, oh, dear chief, dear king, you are so loved. We have a long history. Can I just have one request before you feed me to the dogs? And the king said, what is it? He said, may I feed your dogs for 30 days before you feed them to me? And the chief said, fine, you can feed them. But after that, I will feed you to the dogs. So then the servant every day went to the pound and he served the king's dogs that likes to eat human flesh. This is the point. And every day for 30 days, he fed them dogs. And when it came time for him to be fed to the dogs, and the king opened up so that everybody will see in the village, and everybody came, and he threw them in to the pound, the dogs did not eat him. And the king could not understand it because he was given a command, and the dog could not eat him. They would not, they refused. So the king said, what kind of madness is this? That I am the king and that I have trained these dogs, and now they will not even eat the person that I tell them. This has never happened before. What is going on here? So then the servant said, oh, king, I think I can solve this problem if you would just allow me to speak. And remember, I am begging you for forgiveness at the same time. So the king said, explain this to me. What have you done to my dogs? And the servant said, I did nothing, king. Except for the last 30 days, I gave nothing but kindness and love, and I fed the dogs. Even the dogs will remember the more times that I fed them and gave them food, they would not, on one occasion, attack me because I did not do something. And the king said, what? He said, listen, all of the goodness that I gave to the dogs, and the one time that I was unkind to you, you could not remember all of the days that I was kind for you, and you wanted to throw me to the dogs. But I am in the dog pound, and you commanded the dogs to eat me, but they refused to eat me because they remembered more of the kindness and how I fed them. So this is the moral of the story. The moral of the story is very simple. It means that we should remember to be kind, to be loving, to be forgiving to one another, to not let a single instance of insolence or assuming of being insulted or having a misunderstanding put you in a position when someone who has been good to you mostly all of your life, for you to throw them away and to waste their life. So this is the power of African storytelling. And I think it is also something that is very much that we need to keep in this day. All of us have been through stress through this COVID. Everybody has had some type of emotional and mental stress, and they just didn't think they can handle it. But if we remember our kindness, if we remember the love, if we can keep our coolness, if we can remember to forgive, we'll always be able to keep good relationships with our people. So that is my story. I'm telling you how social change can be made because it changed the king's heart. No more when he got drunk, would he ever make an impulsive decision about taking someone's life because of what the moment brought, the embarrassment, the insult, the misunderstanding, the circumstances. Always wait, consider, and have a balance of the yin and yang and of love. So that's my story today.
Thank you so much, Queen Nana. So glad that you came to join us today. The story was, to many people who don't know about methods or ways in which various communities use storytelling in, social change. Some of the audience may be wondering, what does this have to do with justice? What is the story or moral behind the king who wants to feed his servants to the dogs? But then at the end of the story, many traditional or indigenous communities, they always use, they don't talk in reality, but they expect that once they use, methods or means, to reenact,
there's
a story. Yeah, proverbs and, yes, people will understand what they mean. So thank you so much. And I'm sure that we will have questions or comments for you during the Q&A. So again, I want to thank you for sharing. Next, we're going to bring up Dr. Padmini Murthy, and she'll be sharing with us today promoting social change in Southeast Asian communities. And she'll be presenting to us example from India on traditional ways of storytelling and promoting social change in Southeast Asian communities using the Indian example. And I have posted her bio in the chat. Dr. Padmini Murthy, thank you so much for joining us today. You have the floor.
Thank you so much, Professor Alapo, and thank you so much to both the other speakers. It was so interesting to listen to you. And I think before I start, this is really a great moment for all of us because we have Judge Ketanji Brown confirmed, which I think is amazing. That is societal change. And I think as a colored woman, this is something we have been looking for so long. And it is so nice because it's high time we start looking beyond one's color, but focus on what is inside here and what the person brings to the table. So that being said, thank you so much. I learned so much from both of you today. In India, it's very interesting. And the Indian culture is very similar to the African culture because we're all about colors and animals and birds, and we communicate because some of the best communicators come from there because we are so exuberant. We use color to weave stories. So storytelling has different forms and mediums across the globe, as we all know. But every story has a common purpose, no matter the country, the community, the religion, or the media. They used to teach us lessons and to entertain people. India has diverse cultures. I mean, you can't even keep up with how many dialects and local languages you have. So everybody has their own storytelling. But I would like to, in the few minutes allocated to me, and I would also like to express my thanks and appreciation to Dr. Alapo, because this is such a great way of, uniting us, like cultural harmonization. That's the term I like to use for it. So I think India storytelling, we have the great epics of the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, they're all being handed down. And the history goes that the Mahabharata, and the Ramayana, they were written virtually, when people told them, they were put down. So that is the scribes were used to tell the stories, which came down from generation to generation. And these are very mythological, stories which are popular in India, and they have become a powerful medium of communication. You have puppets, in different parts of India, puppets are used to tell stories even now. Even now, it is so amazing. And the beauty is each puppet represents the diversity, a regional diversity. For example, a puppet show in North India is not the same in South India. The themes may be the same, but how they craft them, the materials used. And they always nowadays, they are so eco-friendly. They use wood, they use vegetable oils, they use cloth, and their finger puppets, or their puppets which you push up and push down, like in Sound of Music, that that movie we all love to watch over and over again, where you had the puppet show with the goat herd and the little girl telling a story. So the same thing, they have puppets on the strings. And the other thing is, they have become a great way of expressing stories for toddlers. And I remember growing up in India, my sister and I, we used to read the Panchatantra, which is even now. And, my nephews have it, my daughter has it, they're all in their late 20s and early 30s. The whole thing was to use animals. You talked about, Queen Mother Zakia, you talked about the king and the servant and the dog. So the Panchatantra was a tale, just to, add on to what you said, where animals actually taught a lesson. Like, what did the greedy lion do? Or how did the rat help the lion when it was, caught in a hunter's net? So it just showed that nobody is too small to make a difference, and we all have to coexist. So this was the Panchatantra. And there were also folklores of kings and queens. We all love our kings and queens and how they defended people. But at the same time, to say, we need to do good. We need to respect people. And it's interesting when we talked about even, we're talking about structural racism and racism. So one of the things I want to tell you is that when, in India, they have this thing about, one person is so fair, the other person is dark, and all this kind of, stupid prejudices. So they started having puppets, where they would have a puppet which was a little darker colored and a puppet which was fairer colored, and how they were friends, or how if one was a man and the other was a woman puppet, they got married. So this is kind of subtly inculcating societal change so that people are aware that we're all the same. Now, the other very interesting thing which is being used is they have made carved stories on wooden boxes. So like, for Christmas, you get a present, for Hanukkah, you get a present. So in India, this present is given to children where they can see all these paintings or carvings on the wooden box. So it's a treasure. And usually it's passed on from one generation to the other. And the other thing is like, it's very, very interesting, because when they're doing these puppet shows, they use different media. They use music, they use dance, they have voice participation, they have audience participation. And when they're having puppet shows, somebody is even painting. So this is like kind of, it's like multicultural. It's like putting in everything. And also the dances we have. I'm just going to talk very briefly about two kinds of dances. We have Kathakali, which is from the south of India. I'm originally from South India, from the state of Kerala. And we also have Kuchipudi from the state of Andhra Pradesh, where I am from. And so this is a story play genre of art. So what happens is Kathakali, broken down, Katha means story in English, and or a conversation or a tale, and Kala is art. So the fusion of Katha and Kala became Kathakali. So this shows the fight between, eternal fight between good and evil, where you have people wearing these masks, which are kind of frightful, but just to tell children that, if you have bad thoughts, your face looks bad. So it's kind of making it grotesque. So good over evil. So this is overdone. It's the same thing in Kuchipudi from Andhra Pradesh. That's another South Indian state. Is you had this where you had ballads, like you have Swan Lake, I'm sure you have a lot of ballads in Africa, like the Proverb. So all this came from there. So basically what I want to talk about, storytelling is such a rich art. And it's by gesticulation, body movements, facial expression, and also it becomes more and more theatrical. And the other thing we have now is a lot of these books which were used, like in the past, they have all now been digitalized. So it is so interesting because they're like kind of saved for posterity. They're there for future generations, and it's using the medium. What I like is they're using nothing has changed in the characters. Only the medium of presentation has changed. Even now, these folklores, storytelling is so popular. And let me give you an example. In India, there used to be a horrible practice called sati, which was outlawed by one of India's greatest social workers. His name was Raja Ram Mohan Roy, working with the British to abolish this because his young sister, there was this horrible practice, like you have widow cleansing in Africa, you have FGM, we have so many evils in our societies all over. So sati was when these young girls were married to older men, and if the men died, they were burnt live on the funeral pyre. Yes, along with that, this was outlawed. This was many years ago, I'm just saying. So the reason he worked so hard is because his sister or his relative was burnt on the funeral pyre, but this was outlawed. So what I'm trying to say, they had these stories where they said this was bad. So you're replacing the rituals and also talking about the importance of widow remarriage. And if a woman loses a husband, it is not her fault. In a couple, the man may go past before, the woman may pass before. So these were used to bring about powerful social messaging. And I cannot finish my presentation without talking about how health messaging was also promoted. Because if you remember, smallpox is now officially been eradicated. How do you think the message was used? They used the message, taking the drummers, the African drummers, the beautiful drums you have in the continent of Africa, to pass the messages on, which was picked up and relayed that the vaccines were available. The same way, modeling on that. And that was what I want to say, how storytelling was so powerful in even addressing pandemics. Like now, we are doing it on WhatsApp, on Twitter. So now coming to that, I think why we have to use the current day social media is to tell a story to promote societal change. For example, we are so happy that Ketanji Brown justice has been confirmed. So this is what, like I was tweeting about it, you're posting about it. So you're getting the message across so people know about it. So the same way, even in India, when there was plague, there was smallpox, any disease, they used to use props, use social media. And the last thing is, they used to have these scenes made for exhibition so that people could see them. Little boxes you have, like you have scenes, so that and then labels. So it's what was taken. They were moving exhibits which were taken to school to explain that. So what I just wanted to say is, even though I'm a trained physician, because I guess I'm a writer, I'm a poet. I always found storytelling so fascinating because you learn so much and you teach so much. And that's why when Dr. Alopo reached out, I go like, yes, I'm so happy to talk about this, but it would be incomplete if I don't talk about how this is so positive in even health messaging. So I think we really need to use this, not to say, oh, did this one slap this one at the Oscars, or did this one, do something like that? Please, Lord, like, how can we be positive? How can we all women come together? How do we support each other? How do we revel in each other's successes? So I think that is the positive power of storytelling, and also to address this ingrained societal injustice, which we all need to speak about, and we shouldn't be scared to speak about, so that just because we look different from somebody else, it doesn't mean we are different. We may look different, but that is the genetic makeup, the coloring, the pigment. My daughter, when she was in second grade in Brooklyn, once said that, and then the principal told me, he was so proud. She said, oh, I look brown because I have more pigment than you. She said that to somebody else, which I thought, like, for like a 7 or 8 year old, that was so true, but it is really true. That's what it is. It's the scientific and the genetic makeup. So storytelling is a way we feel proud of ourselves, our culture, and also to promote, what shall I say, harmony. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Padmini. Thank you for sharing the Indian, Southeast Asian experience. And I know India on its own, there are so many types of people in India. It should be its own continent, if you ask me, because it's so diverse. And just as Queen Mother Nana mentioned the use of Proverbs, in your case, your experience that you shared is the use of folklore and use of theater and puppets to depict current events or atrocities, to bring about change, to make people understand better, instead of just verbally expressing an event that is happening or has happened. The way to make a change or to make people understand better is using theater in drama to depict the same event so that people can understand them much better. So I thank you so much for your contributions to this discussion today. Next, I would like to bring up Her Royal Grace Olamiji Pierce Adefumi from the Oyotunji African Kingdom in South Carolina. And she's going to be sharing with us today a discussion on inequalities and equity around socio-economic opportunities in the United States. Please mute yourself if you're not speaking. I hear some background noise. So we're going to bring Her Royal Grace Olamiji Pierce, who is going to be sharing a discussion on inequalities and equity around socioeconomic opportunities in the United States. And she will be joined with her business partner. So they will have a few more minutes than our other guest speakers, because there will be 2 of them. And you have the floor, Olori Olamiji. You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Professor. It's always a pleasure. Thank you to the presenters before us, Grandmother, Nana, and Doctor. I've learned so much today and am grateful to be able to contribute to this discussion and this panel. Danica, are you there? That is my business partner, best friend. If she's not, she will join us very soon. I saw her jumping on and off, maybe because of service. So yes. We're talking about Here, let me pull up my notes while I discuss. So we're talking about inequalities and equity around socioeconomic opportunities in the United States. But this entire forum is about storytelling. And so as Danica and I were preparing for today's panel, we really went into some, brainstorming as it relates to storytelling around inequities and equity around socioeconomic opportunities. There she is. Hi, Danica.
Hi, everyone. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to participate.
You're welcome. Nice to have you.
Thanks.
And so as we were, peeling back the layers as it relates to storytelling and socioeconomic opportunities in the United States, we began to discuss the American dream. And Danica was like, is that a story? And I told her, yeah, absolutely, it's a story. It is an ideal. It is a story, an understanding, a projection that is woven into the fabric of this nation. Via the American school system, Hollywood, propaganda shared throughout the world, the American dream is an ideal that is, it's an understanding that you can reach a certain level of affluence, of wealth, of position in America. And so it's really interesting because Danica and I are from marginalized communities. We're both born and raised in Chicago, Illinois. And as the professor has introduced me as Her Royal Grace, I am fortunate enough to have been connected to the Yoruba tradition, first generation born in America. I am Nigerian blood by birth, but I am connected to the Oyotunji Kingdom, which is the only Yoruba kingdom with established kingship in North America, recognized by the Congress. And it is in the low country of South Carolina. And so with all of that to build from, Danica and I began to discuss what it was like growing up in Chicago and how does this American dream really apply to people like us? Is that really even a real story? And we, throughout our research have identified—
Oh, sorry to cut you off, Your Royal Grace. Do you mind to put on your video, please? I don't know if you realized it's off.
I did not. I was reading, I'm multitasking on my phone. So when you go to, I guess, to another screen, it takes your video off. So sorry about that.
No problem.
So it was in, I believe, 1967, correct me if I'm wrong, Danica, that Dr. Martin Luther King delivered a speech, and he, for the first time in history, coined the term "Two Americas." And so here we are told the story, or a lot of times it seems as if it's projected from inside the country, and really majority to the outside of the country. You hear a lot of times when you're traveling to other parts of the world, this ideal, people really yearn to be in America. They really believe that there's a level of opportunity here and fairness for everyone, equality and equity for everyone. But as a citizen, Black woman, we're fortunate to have been born to parents who are not necessarily uneducated. They were first generation educated. So we're second generation educated, but that's still very, very in terms of, in comparison to the quote unquote majority counterparts, it's not very evolved in terms of education. We're just second generation college educated ourselves. And so you find that there is a completely different set of opportunities attainable for individuals like us. And so growing up in Chicago, and Danica, she has, her expertise is in real estate. And we both together work in the industrial hemp industry, and we are creating opportunities for diversity, equity, and inclusion in that community as well. But as a real estate professional, she has some expertise as it relates to the way that America is set up socioeconomically. From the very beginning, when it comes to education. Danica, do you want to chime in? I don't know if you're on mute or not, but as it relates to education, what we know to be true is that when you are in the inner city of Chicago, you are assigned to a school based on where you live. You don't necessarily, not public schooling, do you have the opportunity to choose the best school, to compete to attend the best school. I'm sure that there may be lotteries that affect small populations of the students, but in terms of the majority, as it relates to African Americans and Black, Indigenous people of color, our American dream opportunities and socioeconomic, even the attainment for a higher socioeconomic status, plays in two different ways from those who consider themselves majorities.
Yeah, to kind of segue, connecting my real estate experience in this conversation, we were talking about how in Chicago and in other major cities, the school funding for the school funding is derived or paid for by the neighborhood property value. So if you have a community in an impoverished or, inner city community where the home values are going to be less expensive than the north side counterparts, and when you're using a system, so it's set up where the neighborhood schools are paid for by the property taxes of those homes. So, that in and of itself is a glaring, is just highlighting the glaring inequalities, so that you have the schools on the south side suffering from lack of equipment and, just
resources.
lack of funding, lack of resources. Mm-hmm. Thank you. And so, it's vast. Those differences are definitely vast and glaring in the school systems in the inner cities. And that's true in Chicago. That's true in Baltimore, and lots of inner city communities.
Mm-hmm. And so from the very beginning, our American dream is going to be different, because we don't have the same access to quality education. That's just to begin. And that sets the foundation for everything from that point forward. The type of occupation that you have, the type of income that you can make is based on your education. And so we find that the playing field is from the very beginning is just imbalanced. It's not equal. And so you have success stories. I always tell Danica, we're the best. It's not easy to make it out of Chicago. It's not easy to really focus yourself at a young age and know you better be really bright. You better be really sharp so that you can take advantage of other opportunities that you see on television. I used to watch that television show that it was on Saturdays in Chicago, and there was, Danica, the guy would take you around to the mansions. He had like a British accent, and there was at some point,
lifestyles of the rich and famous.
Yes. I've always had an optimistic perspective. I always thought I could do it. If any way that this was gonna happen, and Danica, we met in middle school. And so we've been best friends for 20 years, but something that I admired about Danica was the same thing. She's very, she graduated high school early. She's very ambitious, very accomplished at a young age. She was working for Chase Bank before I even had a bank account. I'm just being honest, like I didn't even have a bank account. I was so young, but she had a job at a bank. And we're just like, me and my other friends were just always enamored. It took that to really get us to where we are today, which is not even as far as we would like to be. I spoke about the fact that we work in the industrial hemp industry. Danica, you've got some stats as it relates to Black women and funding Black women in executive positions, and we'll name those, and then we can talk about our experience in our industry and how the inequality and lack of diversification of access to capital has affected us as Black women in America.
One that is really glaring, Black professionals overall in 2018 held just 3.3% of all executive or senior level roles. And it's interesting, as we were researching now, the pandemic, 2020, the killing of George Floyd, those things did prompt some change, but, that's still such a low number when you consider that, Black Americans are 13-14% of the population. And then lump us with all the other minorities. And, so that was one that I really, thought was glaring. Even though Black women are founding startups at a rapid rate, nearly doubling 2014 to 2019, according to a report commissioned by American Express, they, along with Hispanic female Black owners, received only 0.43% of the $166 billion in venture capital funding given out in 2020. So, just those personal sentiments kicking in there. Okay, access to capital is critical to help these female Black business owners, according to 43% of 1,000 Black entrepreneurs surveyed by LinkedIn, citing that as the number one barrier, for their growth and being able to compete in industries with their counterparts.
And so ultimately, our conclusion and our understanding from firsthand experience, from our research, from interactions with white America, we definitely believe that the story that's been passed down from generation to generation about the American dream, and the one that's projected throughout the world as it relates to this ideal of America, is largely untrue. Some of the work that we're doing today, we are partnering with our vendor partners, brands that we carry in our e-commerce store, so that they can, because they have created a footing in a multi-billion-dollar industry that was built on the backs of marginalized communities. And we're talking about industrial hemp and cannabis. The companies that are succeeding right now have a responsibility to those communities, to those individuals who were hit on by the war on drugs, or really the war on this plant. They have a responsibility to usher them into this industry as a way to assist them with creating generational wealth. I believe 2026, this industry globally is going to be worth $90 billion. And so the brands that we carry in our e-commerce store are multi-million dollar brands. And we have created programs and opportunities for them to partner with us as Black women from marginalized communities to, do what they need to be doing to fulfill that responsibility.
But more so sharing their platform, us giving us the ability to leverage their platform to kind of make up for the gaps in the wealth distribution. So,
and so Dr. Ramey mentioned, what are some ways that students could be more socially active as it relates to, or even begin this discussion. I believe that looking for opportunities to participate in this type of discussion is uncomfortable, but that begins the ball rolling, because remember, this is the American dream. This is a story. We have to be intentional about dispelling this myth. It doesn't exist. There are two Americas, maybe even more, because like I said, you know, Danica and I are fortunate, but what about those individuals who don't even know what they don't know? They have no even perception or one close enough to even realize, you know, I need education, I need this, I need that. You know, people are really bad off from the Black, Indigenous, people of color communities. And so for students who are interested in activating themselves, serving these communities, I say, you know, look for volunteer opportunities. We are working with a group of students now from San Diego. What's the name of the university?
San Diego State University, SDSU.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you can speak about that program, but we are working with a group of students now who we are involving in our social activism as it relates to us getting the word out, utilizing social media and things of that nature. And so
so to like add to how we tell our stories, you know, we definitely use social media, videos, music. I think that is a very important way that we could get our message reached as far as, you know, Africa and, you know, other countries, you know, so that we can band together and like see how similar our stories are. And I think that's the most powerful thing we have.
So that's pretty much what we have as an economic opportunity in the United States and equity in this relation. Thank you again, Professor. I don't know where we are with time.
I did
but
paste our DEI link in the chat also, so that you guys can see some of the work that we've done.
Do you want to talk about your work from the link that you've posted, because you still have a few minutes, so maybe you can use that time in explaining more on how you overcame or how you were able to use the story, you know, your experiences in reshaping you know, your life, you know, the intergenerational story that were passed down by this American dream. And then you as Black women or women of color now finding yourself at a point in your life where you're grown and you want to experience or tap into this American dream. And then you're finding out that there are a lot of biases, there are a lot of obstacles, there are a lot of, you know, things preventing you from actually getting there, but you were able to connect with other people, share your experience, tell your stories, and now you're able to actually do the same for other young women through your own connections, your own, you know, outfit, your activities that you're working on. So if you want to take a few minutes to tell us about this opportunity or how you were able to branch into the opportunity that you're working on now.
Danica, do you want to begin as it relates to why Greenish Vibes is social equity imprint at this point?
Sure. So I'll kind of, you know, so Greenish Vibes, as Olamide said, we have a e-commerce space where we curate CBD wellness products and accessories. And so that began as a low barrier way to get into the industry and compete. You know, I knew right away that the issues that I was facing starting a business is, you know, true for the counterparts in the industry. So that's why I felt it necessary to like intentionally focus on selling those brands in the store, working with them to collaborate, you know, because if we don't, then certainly no one else is doing it. So not that we sell or work with those partners exclusively, because just like through our DEI, we recognize that we need to leverage those relationships. So we need to be like the middle person, the middle people, bridging the gap from our our community, and giving them those opportunities, exposing them, and then leveraging our position with the other brands, that are ally brands. So that was very important from the beginning, for us to choose to work with Black and women-owned brands. And so how we got here, we just, like her said, we used everything that we gathered over the years, my real estate experience, my entrepreneurship, my past, having opened a juice bar, I just gathered like all those things and have been able to serve as the middle person. So the DER partnership, our main benefit to our partners is that it attracts positive PR to highlight your brand's efforts with marginalized communities working in the cannabis industry. Positive PR is going to be a fast way, like philanthropy is going to, increase your sales. So, just really pushing on them to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, but also it benefits them, and their bottom line.
And PR is storytelling in itself. One of the brands that we work with just recently promoted a Black CEO. And he is also a founder, Papa and Barkley, one of those multi-million-dollar brands. We are really intentional on creating or supporting them in creating a story about the bridge that they're going to be building to these marginalized communities. What we have learned through our research, and this, we've been in this vein of diversity, equity, and inclusion for the better part of this entire year, end of last year. And what we have learned is that it requires us to do the work. It requires us to show up and, like I say, be intentional with these brands and show them the pathway. We have been very much intentional, very active as it relates to what we suggest to these brands. Because what we do know is that historically, the different programs and different initiatives in the context of DEI have been ineffective. It's always like just a little bit, let me just throw a little bit in, or, and sometimes in our research, when we're trying to apply to different conferences, trade shows, and things like that, there are no diversity, equity, and inclusion opportunities. What does that mean? It means that the same amount to access these opportunities that African-American women, Black, Indigenous, people of color, people from marginalized communities that were targeted on the war on this plant are being put at the same level as it relates to socioeconomic resources as those who have not been targeted, those who do not come from marginalized communities, what we would call the majority of white America. They're not being challenged to pay more, and Black people are being asked to pay the same. That's unequal because the history suggests that we have less based on the systematic inequalities, the few that we've named on this panel here. And so it's just been very important for us to just be honest, transparent, and really kind of like put it in their face, this is what you guys need to do. And this is how we can support you in doing it. Okay, so I saw that message, Professor. Thank you guys so much. Really appreciate this opportunity to share and contribute to this discussion. And our contact information is in the, if you guys want to connect with us as it relates to our DEI efforts, our contact information is in the chat. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, your Royal Grace Olamiji and Miss Danica Brown Fraser, for sharing, telling us your story. This is what we call using proverb or folklore, drama or fiction, saying bringing it into reality, hearing from the horse's mouth about the many, Queen Nana is laughing, the many ills of injustices that has faced many women of color in terms of access, in terms of equity, in terms of opportunities that are laying right in their front, but pass them by because they don't have the means to engage or access or be, equal participants in those opportunities. So I thank you so much for, telling your story. We've heard from various speakers, about how we use community based traditional story methods, using folklore, using proverbs, theater, drama, dolls, puppets, and now we're hearing from you directly from your actual experience. So I want to thank you for joining us today. And I certainly thank Ms. Danica Brown-Fraser for her involvement as well. We will have some time, to have Q&A after our next speaker has completed her presentation. We'll open the floor for dialogue or Q&A or comments from the audience. So last but not the least, I would like to bring up Dr. Shenzira Davis Kahina. She's the founding director of Pe Ankh Smai Tawi organization and also the director of AST Speaks. Her topic of discussion today is social justice, African griot narratives. And what is very interesting about Dr. Shenzira, which I've had the opportunity to know for a few years now and has collaborated on, we've collaborated on many events, and she has been a guest speaker at BMCC, African History of African Civilization courses a couple of times. She's also a griot. I don't know if many of you know what griots are. In parts of Mali and Guinea, they have historians, traditional storytellers who, they don't read, they don't write, but from memory, they can recite thousands of years of history and recite every name, every person, everything that has happened in that society or community for thousands of years, word for word, without missing a name, without missing a note. So Dr. Shenzira is going to be presenting to us today, her griot services. She's going to present to us about African traditional storytelling methods. Dr. Shenzira, you have the floor. You're welcome.
Well, first and foremost, before I even turn on my video, because there's multiple things happening in my arena, I want to just say a gracious thank you to you, Sister Queen Nana of Huremi Alapo. Got to make sure that I keep that energy up. It's been an honor and a privilege to listen to every single presenter. I am humbled, and I ask for ancestral permission to move this convening forward. If I may hear a yay.
Yay.
Give thanks. One of the things that I really am hoping to be able to do, and I had sent this link, but I'll just put it inside of our chat so that other persons can take their time and peruse through the way in which we use theater, dance, music, etc., to share our stories, to share our narrative. Part of where I think some of this background noise is still too loud for me, so I'm going to move a little bit. Okay.
And you need to turn your camera on too, please. Okay. So we can see you. Okay. She's joining us from the beautiful Virgin Islands.
I am navigating. Give me a moment. Thank you. Thank you. I am making sure that the Wi-Fi just did something here for a second, so give me a moment. Okay, I don't see it. The video link that I sent to you, Nana, are you able to play that at all?
The YouTube video that you posted in the chat?
Yes, but it's okay. I will just describe it. I'm doing my best
Yes, I
right now
can
to
play.
just see if I
Hold
can
on.
get it.
Try it.
No, I
Speak. Yeah, my internet is also a little bit
No worries,
off.
no worries, no worries. I'm just gonna ask most humbly that first just take a moment of reflection before I can get my video in place. And that the intention is for us to take a moment and reflect on all of the stories, all of the folklore, all of the uplifting, gathering informations that we utilize to be able to thank you, that we utilize to be able to bring truth to power, to restore. And knew that term social justice existed. It's really interesting that most of the time persons will
We lost you, Cesara. Turn your mic on. I don't think she knows we lost her.
Yeah, I think her
I'm in a
social
different platform.
justice, diversity,
Coming into
equity,
a
and
different
inclusion.
platform. Give me a minute. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, there we go.
Just a couple of seconds.
Right, I figured that we were gonna have, wow, it's going in and out, and I'm not sure why, because I'm in a really cool spot. But there we go. I think we're in a better space. Give thanks. Can you see me and hear me clearly now?
Yes, we can. Hello, beloved. Yes,
Give
and like mountains and the ocean is beautiful for us. We love you. You got the
right forward, Sister Queen, Nana Zakia. I am really grateful for just having, and I can keep my presentation short because there's been so much that has already been shared in regards to how we bring storytelling into the traditional trajectory and narrative of our African experience, our Eurasian experience, our Indigenous experience, and our whole shared humanity experience. And with that, as I started intentionally, I greet you, Hotep, Hetephu. I'm greeting you in peace. When we start our stories, we always start with long, 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 long. Me say long, 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 long ago. There was a time, all them people there, they used to come to we, you know. They used to come to we school. They used to come, which part we worship. They used to come to the air, the fire, the earth, the water, to catch spirit, you know. You hear what I said? To catch spirit. And every time they come, we feed them, we clothe them, we shelter them, we give them all they need to survive on this place. Some call the earth, some refer to Geb and Seb. Some remember the divine mother, you know, asked. Sometimes they miscall her Isis, and they remember the divine father. Some know him as Asar. Some in the Greco-Roman vernacular will say Osiris. And they forget, you know, all of them come, remember, by the air, the fire, the earth, and the water to catch spirit, you know.
to catch spirit in every single portion of the cellular upliftment, the tissue, the sinew to the nerve endings to the muscles, Okay, proper English, the muscle them. We talking about a time where air, fire, earth, water, and spirit, I say, from long ago, when we didn't use even the language I speaking to you in right now, before my father, before my mother, before your father, before your mother, a time where we used to sit in a circle and we used to feast together. We used to sit in a circle and we used to greet one another with love and mercies and strength and healing vibration. I talking about the air, the fire, the earth, and the water in spirit, all the time. And we start to move in a section because we never stop moving, because when we breathe in, we move in. When the heart flowing, we move in. When the brain sometime go off center, we still move in. And we start to tell all kind of story from thing my grandfather used to say to me, my grandmother used to say to me, bring it up, how we used to feed others, clothe others, shelter others, and even care for the picnic them, the children, the little people. How we used to nurture them when they came into the birth space. How we used to help them even before conception. And even when they wanted to war, the wars we used to have would be finished in that day, not to carry on in the next moon, not to carry on for generation upon generation, where war became the trajectory and the technique of how we dealt with air, fire, earth, water, and spirit, I'm telling you from the long back. So some people like to talk about Brenancy. Here in the Caribbean, you're going to always hear about Brenancy and some of the mischievousness of Brenancy. Some will remember that Brenancy, yeah, the little spider, beautiful spider, lovely spider, that used to bring together all the different moral teachings, all the different virtues, and all the different techniques of how we are to live, not by ourselves, but together. Proper English, together. However, I gonna go back to my story. So there was a time where we was in this village, far up in the mountains, right? You see in back of me, in the Maroon Sanctuary. And in this Maroon Sanctuary, we had an opportunity to see where our African ancestors, some were free and some were enslaved and some was in between. But they used to run away into this land we call Maroon Sanctuary. Right here upon this island called St. Croix, St. Croix to some, in the middle of what is now the Virgin Islands. But we're talking about back in the time of the Danes, back in the time of the French, back in the time of the Spanish, back in the time of the Knights of Malta, back in the time even before America knew itself fully. This is a space where we gathered, respecting air, fire, earth, water, and spirit, and keeping that circle like love together. It wasn't about war. And we gave, and we shared, and we loved, and we cared. And we were able to keep a certain balance, a certain harmony. We didn't have terms like diversity, equity, and inclusion. We didn't have terms like reparatory justice because justice was just that, truth, divine righteousness, harmony, balance, propriety, sobriety. Woo. Those principles, all of them there, we use one word, ma'at, M-A-A-T, all around air, fire, earth, and water. And so I had to remember all them teachings from my great grandmother
and my great, 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 great grandfather, and all the relatives in between. Because these stories, these narratives, these teachings, these values, these virtues come up from long ago, you know. This is not new, this is not a 21st century thing. This is an old time thing. And we asking for the ability to bring Nancy and Nancy, all the Tory them, all the narratives, no, so that we can have balance, we can restore harmony, and we can keep the love. I'm gonna stop there for now. The wheel bend and the story and my son. So with that, my family, I'm really honored and privileged to be able to just share like a segment, a slither, if you will, of how we have been able here through Per Ankh and Smaitawi, Per Ankh University Institute, Per Ankh Bambula, drummers and dancers, and a host of other circles. When you hear AST speaks, yes, it's asked the Divine Mother speaks, but it's also our ancient ancestral African sacred traditions. You got that? Our ancient ancestral African sacred traditions. And what we do is we utilize storytelling to some. When we speak of griot, we speaking from generation to generation to generation to generation and bringing that knowledge system into its fruition in contemporary times from a very ancestral, long lineage. So many times we might sing our vibration on how we're dealing with social change. Some people choose to march. Some of us have marched a good half of our life, so we leave in areas for other persons that need to march now to do so they could have half of their life contributing to that vibration. And then we also speak truth to power so that we're doing activism. Activism means you taking action. Me not want to hear apology for things that foster injustice and you don't change your behavior. I'm gonna say that one more time. You telling me I sorry or you sorry and you don't change your behavior. That doesn't seem like it restores balance. It doesn't repair the issue. It doesn't facilitate us moving forward and growing. Hence, when we speak of the African tradition, and I say it very clearly, there isn't a the, but it should be a multiplicity, a transcultural vibration, because in the African continent, again, 12 million square miles. Of course, there's going to be divisiveness. Of course, there's going to be different manifestations, more correctly, of how people express virtue, express stories, express narratives, and speak their truth into power with action. So every time that we have these convenings, and I'm always honored to be a part of these convenings, I feel like I have been blessed abundantly for generations upon generations upon generations upon generations by everyone giving that section to this longer narrative, which is going to be part of the griot narrative that I share, because I take notes. I take very copious notes on what people say. And I love to be able to bring in what our sister and brethren bring in from the East Indian tradition and other Eurasian traditions and the Native Amerindian tradition, and bringing it right true to our core self from all of the honorable grandmothers, queen mothers, sister queen mothers, and sister queens that are here in this convening. I am very grateful when I'm hearing of the Ifa tradition and the Yoruba vibrational shift, which is now finally starting to be not just inculcated, but actually integrated into persons' acceptance of traditional African grounded narratives. So it's not always where you're born. It's where you drop your bucket and which path you walk, right? And we need to have that conversation, and hopefully it's going to take women folk, because the men folk have had their opportunity and we already see how wonderful and wondrous that flows. And this is a time astronomically, not astrology, folks, but from the astronomical space, this is the time of the divine nectar too. Let me be more specific. You may say goddess, you may say sister queen, you may say nana, queen mother, Neter, but the bottom line, this is the time where the feminine energy in our story is highlighted. It's fluid, it's righteous, it's balanced. When women speak story, we bring in the men folk, the children, the old people, and everybody in between. We don't leave out because we're nurturers, we're birth givers. And when I say birth givers, whether you have physically delivered a child or not, when you honor the divine feminine, the divine maternal energy in your soul self, in your stories, it comes forward. I've been telling stories from when I was very little because I used to like to read and listen to old people talk. And so a lot of the elders in my circle, whether I was in the Dominican Republic, St. Martin, Aruba, Curacao, Suriname, Guyana, it didn't matter where my family chose to settle. And we have relatives throughout this Caribbean American region. We have relatives in Panama. And some of the serious stories of our history involve how persons use storytelling, these narratives from mouth to ear, to encourage persons to stand up for their rights, to ensure that they were afforded truth and justice in their respective lifetime. So from an academic space now, we can always speak of the importance of social justice as a trajectory for how persons engage in what we do together, because social justice will never be successful in any format if persons attempt to do it by themselves. It's not grounded in individualism. It is not grounded even in a capitalist imperialist model. It is designed so that it is socially, listen to the term, social justice. It's grounded in how we bring truth to power and vibrations and love and energy to one another. So I'm giving you a snippet. What I'm hoping you'll be able to see is the way that we've been able to use film, theater, dance, drama, spoken word, song, music, and definitely the drum, to be able to share our narrative of liberation, unification, social governance in contemporary times, in that piece on the Queens of the Virgins. And that's one portion. And as we move forward together, I'm looking forward, and I know that we have the ability to network together. Thank you very much for that, Sister Queen Nana, Dr. Olufemi Alapo. I am just always honored. I use this background so that I'm letting persons know it's an open invitation. Come to St. Croix, I'm going to keep saying that. One of our convenings needs to be in St. Croix. I know next year, the Caribbean Studies Association Conference, June, the first week, will be hosted in St. Croix. So I'm putting it out so that persons can already have that in their trajectory. And I'll close with, remember the time when we went to the areas to talk about air, fire, earth, water, and spirit? Do you remember a few? Remember what the ancestors said now. Remember what Bernancy bring to the table, Remember, it take all of we, not one of we, but all of we, full up the basket, all together. I give thanks, Hotep.
Hotep. Thank you so much, Dr.
Thank you. We love
Shenzira.
you. I'm going to be
Thank you for joining
soon.
us. Thank you so much for the sharing about your storytelling in the Caribbean, in St. Croix, in using griot services and drama and drumming, in various African diasporic forms, connecting from the ancestors to all generations, the future. Thank you so much. So I want to thank all the guest speakers today. We've heard from, grandmother Patricia, who started the presentation earlier on Native American storytelling for social change. And she did show, a diagram, intergenerational, ways in which we can all work together collaboratively in promoting social change. We heard from Queen Mother Nana Zakia, who gave a presentation on the African traditional storytelling methods of using proverbs, in depicting, social change. And also we heard from Dr. Padmini Murthy, who shared from the Southeast Asian, specifically Indian communities, and the use of puppets in storytelling for social change, the use of drama in, bringing about social change. And we heard from Her Royal Grace Olami GPS and her business partner, talking directly, telling us their own story from, their own experience of women of color who, were told, passed down information about the American dream and how they could be successful if they got an education and, all the good things that they had been told previously, and then arriving at that moment and found all these obstacles and challenges for them to actually achieve, their dream. And now we've concluded this panel discussion with the presence of Dr. Shenzira from St. Croix in the Virgin Islands. And I want to give some few minutes to our audience to ask any questions or make any comments or add to the discussion. You can address your questions to any specific panelist, or you can, pose any general question or comments. The floor is open now. And before we actually go to the Q&A, let us all give a warm round of applause and show our appreciation from the BMCC community to all our panelists. And I don't know if any member of the REI committee is here. I know Dr. Pedro was here earlier. I don't know if anyone is here from the BMCC REI community. If you would like to make a comment, you're certainly welcome to do so. Is anyone here from the Race, Equity, and Inclusion Committee? All right. Okay, so we'll move to the Q&A or open floor discussion now. Any question to any particular panelist or any comments, or do you have any general question or comments?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to say this comment because unfortunately I'm going to have to leave in a few moments. But my comment is to all of us as Sisterin, whether we have African American heritage, Native American heritage, Caribbean heritage, Asian, East Indian heritage, whether we have European heritage. This is the age of Aquarius. This is the age of Ma'at. This is the age in which women, once again, because in the beginning, even if you look at the documentary about the real Eve, the first woman that they did some years ago when they found her, this is about reinstalling the matriarchal society of women. This is the beginning of us also seeing where women are going to be in powerful positions again to heal, to grow, to maintain peace, harmony, good health, peace throughout not just our own communities, not just in our own countries, but throughout the world. It is a global movement. Women are going to move up. Ketanji Brown was just one woman that is indicative of how this is going. Stacey Abrams, it's another one. You, me, I, Patricia, Genzia, we are the women who have taken the responsibilities that our ancestors have given us, who have kept ourselves in the light and not the dark, so that we would be able to see people, folks, all levels. I don't care if you got a college education and you don't have a college education. If your spirit, the spirit of fire, earth, water, air, to love Mother Earth, to love and be caretakers again of the animals and the insects, and just to be able to have friendly use of them is empowering. So I have to leave, and I just want to say thank you so much. I love you all. I can't wait until this is really over. We can sit at table, we can really discuss, we can have young people come in, and we can really be able to make an impact. And you sisters have made a glorious impact on my life. And I pledge my life, and I pledge my body, I pledge my spirit, I pledge every fiber from the soles of my feet to the crown of my head to always move forward as a mother who just gave birth to the most precious thing in life, which is a child. And as you said, you don't have to be a mother physically. It's the birth of a new law that came about. It's the birth of the being able to say we will no longer burn young girls at the funeral fire with the men. It's the birth of us standing up for George Floyd. It's the birth of us saying, stop raping Mother Earth. So with every fiber in my bone, I am so honored to be with y'all. It's been a rough week. I can't tell you how just this little panel has lifted me up, because I was down. I was really down. And I appreciate you, Remy, for thinking about me always and my worth. And I love you, Mother Patricia, and I love you, Chensras. And I just want to say, I want everybody to be free and happy and to fulfill their dreams and live according to what we are. War, what is it good for? Absolutely nothing. I love y'all. I gotta go. Forgive me. It's been a rough week, but you really have inspired me. I miss my mothers. I lost so many of my mothers. I lost Alicia. I lost Mama D. I lost so many mothers this past 3 years. Nana Ansar, but I have you to hold me up and lift me up, and that's all we're supposed to do.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much, Queen Nana, for telling your story, for sharing, for being here today. And it's certainly always a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for committing your life's work.
I gotta go.
Thank you so much. God bless you.
I didn't mean to be a
Thank you.
Sorry.
It's okay. Thank you. That's how we tell our story. We got to let it out sometimes so that people can hear how we feel and how we can bring about change in our various communities. Thank you so much. I want to bring Grandmother Patricia for any closing remarks that she may have or any comments that she would like to share. And I see the other speakers, because they had other schedule, have left. After Grandmother Patricia, we're going to see if anyone else has any questions or comments, and then we'll give Dr. Shenzira the final closing remarks. Grandmother.
Yes, thank you. The chart that I showed, it illustrated why and how racism does perpetuate in inequality and how to reframe this inequality. And so I use the English term ceremony, it's an abstract word in English. It is healing occurs in a meditative state, and healing occurs in the word ceremony, and we're all indigenous to the earth, water, fire, and air. And so when I use the word ceremony, then there is yes, there is art, there is poetry, there is theater, there is dance, and there is chanting, and there is drumming. And it puts us in this meditative state in which we do remember and we awaken to our inherent divinity within us. And thank you for all of our collective intention for the women to survive and thrive in these times, these challenging times that we are coming to equanimity also.
Thank you very much, Grandmother Patricia. Any remarks or questions from the audience? All right, Dr. Shenzira. Oh, I see. Augustine McCarthy has their hand raised.
Thank you so much. This has been wonderful. I have gotten so much out of it. It's been very helpful for me to listen. I wanted to ask if my perception is based in historical fact, so that we have people here who have more information than I do. My understanding is that when we have had more matriarchal cultures, that there was perhaps more of a communal effort and working together rather than being in such a competitive atmosphere where the limited resources were constantly being fought over. Is that story that I have in my mind based in the reality historically?
Thank you for asking that. Before you get any response, can you introduce yourself and let us know what campus you are from?
Sure. I am in the Media Arts and Technology Department at Borough of Manhattan Community College.
Okay. All right. Any responses from Dr. Shenzira or Grandmother Patricia?
I'm really honored by the question because sometimes it's difficult to have the discussion regarding, keep going, go ahead. There's a lot going on around us because I'm in a space where there's activity and there's young people doing things and brothers and sisters coming into this space wondering what am I talking about and trying to chime in. So I have to come out and put a background so it didn't look like it was a whole audience of people like, what's she talking about? I want to be in this panel. So when you ask that question and you raise that perception of what you see, what you're seeing, there's a lot of truth in that. And when we say patriarchy, we're speaking of a patriarchy that's grounded in a very exploitative, non-inclusive space. But there was a time where there was a patriarchy that had a more respect, or maybe the proper term I should be using is a patrilineal space, where the lineage came through the male, but there was still the respect for the women. And there was still the inclusivity of the women. So I want to make sure that I don't, in my response, tarnish that part, because we're speaking millennia upon millennia upon millennia ago. It's also very important when you raise that particular commentary, and I'm very thankful for that, is that sometimes we forget that the time we're living in now, we tend to try to say it's going to be exactly like what it was before, and it won't be, because the social construct is quite different. And it's a time for us to recognize that we speak of matrilineal, matriarchal, patrilineal, patriarchal, and what people kind of attack a lot is the patriarchy, when in actuality, we are supposed to be evolving into a more communal, or restoring a more communal, you heard me speak of the term ma'at earlier, but it's called ma'at-theocracy. It's a balanced, harmonious relationship between males, and listen to what I say, male males, male females, female males, and females females. And I know those that recognize that indigenous grounding, they would know what I'm saying, because that's the part where we're growing into, where we're respecting the space, the place in which we come physiologically, but we also recognize there's brothers that have very feminine spaces to them. There's sisters that have very masculine spaces to them. And there's a fusion that comes. So when you hear us speak of
advocacy. That's what I'm speaking of in my work. So thank you so much for that question and that statement. I'm grateful.
Grandmother Patricia, would you like to respond to his question?
I would like to say that there's hierarchy, patriarchy, and hierarchy, matriarchy. And I teach by using the art of making distinction, which is not dualistic and does not polarize people into adversary and conflict. So, and I also teach from our tribal spiritual ceremonial language, healing language, which I'm simplifying into English and not translating, but illustrating, defining, and describing. And so our language is speaking about Koapashishchina, meaning every child is born through the water, and that is the female, and the spiritual name, and the male is Nayet Nezgana, who ensures, the protector provider who ensures there's no hunger, poverty, disease, and premature death, like war and so on. And then we are also related in our primary family and extended family through matrilineal, through our bloodline. So our origin, our creation stories and of selfhood, the I am is always through our mother. And in that way, we also have four concepts which are about procreation, which is masculine male and feminine female, and masculine female and feminine male. And so the last two are considered medicine people who came in as medicine people, but still there is the procreation, and the people who take care of the medicine people take care of the first two the first two categories of the traditional family unit. So it's like a figure 8 in which then everything remains in harmony and balance with the natural order laws. I hope I could get that across in terms of not only the terminology, but the distinction of a tribal language and how it is in the context of natural order, purpose, and laws, and that it is always life affirming and procreation into the primary family unit, and then also the medicine people who take care of the community, and the community takes care of the medicine people. Let me know if you understand. That is
Did
very
they answer? Did they respond to your question, Augustine?
It's really it's simple in terms of yes and no. From the beginning, I just presented a chart. It's what's built in, and it's yes and no. What we say yes and no, and the consequences to it. It's death, destructive and death producing, or constructive and life affirming. And so when hierarchy, patriarchy, or matriarchy, hierarchy, matriarchy is in that category, then we have to reframe into the constructive and life affirming. That's ceremony, and that's the purpose of healing and learning and healing.
Thank you very much, grandmother. And I think Augustine gave you a thumbs up heart that you responded to his question. Are there any other comments or questions from the floor? I see some of my students from my History of African Civilizations class. Any comments? All right. Raquel, before she left, posted a comment to me and said, a loving and moving presentation, and sent her warm regards to all the panelists. We've had, a long discussion today on traditional storytelling methods as a tool for promoting social change, in which we looked at, in which, we had 5 or 6 panelists and women educators, community activists who share their expertise on the use of traditional story methods as a critical framework for talking about racism and other forms of injustice. Many of the panelists shared how, we use folklore, how we use proverbs, writing fiction using different types of characters to depict real world issues, sharing from their own, perspectives, their own experiences, and, in how we can promote social change, how we can promote equity, advance equity, how we can collaborate and work on inclusion and bring about justice in our various communities. We also heard on how to grab people's attention through various storytelling methods and how to engage each other by working together collaboratively. So I want to thank everybody that came today. I want to first of all thank the committee members of the Race, Equity and Inclusion Committee at BMCC, the REI committee. Thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to put this program together during the first ever Social Justice Week at BMCC with the theme, Your Voice, Our Action, a Better BMCC. And of course, I have students from York College joining us and from various places. You're not limited to the theme of social justice, your voice, our action, a better BMCC. It is our voices, our actions, a better CUNY, a better community, a better New York City, a better world. So it's all inclusive. This is how we can all tell our individual or various stories in how to bring about social change, how to bring about social justice, how to tell about, events or activities going on in various communities and how each one of us, whether we're Black, brown, white, blue, it does not matter. We're all one family in which we may look different, we may have different backgrounds, but in telling the stories and using different methods of telling these stories, we can learn from each other, we can work together and collaborate in bringing about social change. So I want to also thank the Center for Ethnic and Race Studies at BMCC for co-sponsoring this program, most especially my department chair, Dr. Patricia Matthews. And thank you again, Grandmother Patricia, for sharing your Native American perspective. Also to Queen Nana Zakia for sharing about the African traditional methods. To Dr. Padmini Murthy for sharing about Southeast Asian community, especially experiences from India. Her Royal Grace Olamiji Pierce and Ms. Danica Frazier, sharing about the African American perspective or the African diaspora perspective. And Dr. Shenzira Kahina from St. Croix Virgin Islands, sharing from the African Caribbean perspective. Thank you to all my students from BMCC, especially from the History of African Civilizations course, and also students from your college World History courses. Thank you to all the faculty that joined us today, to all the students and all the non-CUNY participants. Thank you so much for being here. And I hope that we've learned a lot. If you would like to connect with any of the panelists, you can send me an email. Go back on the bmcc.edu website to the Social Justice Week of events, and my email address will be there. I'll be happy to connect you with any of the panelists. Thank you so much, everyone. It's been a wonderful afternoon, and I wish you all the best. Let us continue to work together in telling our stories, in sharing our experiences with one voice so that we can bring about a just world. Thank you so much. God bless you all.
Grateful.